All right, I think we're live.
Ready to go. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Frank Locker, and I'm here to kick off our Revolution in Education pre-Congress webinar. This webinar is going to focus on what we're doing in the Congress and what we're doing before the Congress. With me today are two very long established colleagues, Dick Salmon, who is in London, and Gabriel Diago, who is in Bogota. Could each of you introduce yourself a little bit more and also tell how we came to do this together?
I think I've known Frank just a little bit longer, so maybe I'll go first. Frank and I met because of a collection of 8 different circumstances 18 years ago in Montana, and we helped plan a very innovative school together that got a lot of attention in the region and around the world, and that led to many future collaborations with Frank. And then Frank invited me to be a part of something called the Revolution in Education the Learning Environments for Tomorrow Institute at Harvard. And Gabriel actually was one of the participants in the studio that I led many years ago. But he and his family had already had a connection to Frank, and he can explain more about that.
Well, yeah. So Frank and we actually met in that LEFT program, Nick. I was attending, it was my first year at Kaobos, and I was starting to learn the ropes of education. I'm actually an industrial engineer by career, but I've been working in education for the past 9 years, almost 10 now. And in that LEFT program, Frank and I met. I told him he had to come to Colombia, and he immediately told me he would go pro bono if I invited him. I told him immediately that he was invited, and we started this quest to revolutionize education, starting with Kaobos, and now, with the Revolutions in Education Congress, with the Golden Circles, and a few initiatives that Frank and I have had within the past few years. We've been spreading the word about project-based learning and about meaningful education, which is really what we want.
Yeah, what we did in Kaobos, and that was within 2 months of my meeting Gabriel back in 2013, is we first did visioning to create a concept of what the future school should look like. And one of the primary daily deliveries that was advocated in that visioning was project-based learning. So to kick that off, I led professional development for the staff at Kaobos. And they jumped into it, and I had a number of different clients in Colombia at the time, and I would stop in every quarter and do rounds with the teachers and hear their stories and the how they're approaching project-based learning, and then comment on it. And each time I would come back and things would be better. And since then, Kaobos has adopted project-based learning as a staple of its daily delivery. So I'm very pleased with the way that has evolved, as I am very pleased with the way my working relationship with Gabriel has evolved. Nick, you and I started in 2004, and yes, the project we did in Kalispell, Montana was fantastic. You, however, have gone on to do many, I would say, bigger and better things, but I'm sure from a qualitative point of view, they're all high quality, but you're in London now. So what's going on?
Well, it's partially COVID and partially the world of today, which is that you can live anywhere, and as long as you have a decent internet connection, you can work everywhere. And since I worked with Frank, in those early years, I created my own company 6 years ago called the Collaborative Learning Network. And one of my collaborators lives here in the UK, Kavita Tana. She has her own company, Globally Reconnect. And together we work in Australia and in China and about 20 different countries in Africa. And so we are here at this point, but then I'll fly from here to Bogota and get to see you guys in real life again, which will feel great all unto itself, since it's been a long time since we've been able to do that.
That's right. Seeing people in the flesh these days is a big deal.
Yeah.
And also hard to do, by the way. So, so there we are. Great, thank you, Nick. And I'll just comment that I take full responsibility for the successes that these two collaborators have had since they first met me, and I am just absolutely pleased with the way they have taken that initial, meeting and understanding and flown in ways that I could never have imagined. So it's really gratifying for me to continue to be able to work with them. So much for our patting ourselves on the back. Let's talk about the Revolution in Education Congress. So this is number 3. We started this in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and it was the triumvirate of the 3 of us. Could one of you outline what those were about and how we've gotten to where we are today?
Well,
you want to go, Nick?
Well, I'll start, and Gabrielle, you can fill in some gaps. For the 3 of us, as Frank mentioned, project-based learning has been an element of dramatic transformation in schools around the world. We've seen it in the places that we've been fortunate to work in. Gabrielle experienced it directly with all the educators and young people in his schools. And we got to a point where it was like enough to just foster those connections in those locations. But what if we had a gathering and really kind of promoted this? And that was really kind of Gabrielle's passion for drawing us all together. And Frank and I had connections with people in different parts of the world, and most of these came directly from Frank, but we were able to bring David Ross and Susie Boss and Stephen Levy from North America down. And then we had other collaborators from throughout South and Central America who arrived as well. And I think we had like 300 people the first time. And it was quite an immersive experience. I think we did it for 3 days on the campus of Los Cabos, and just brought a passion to what were these independent practices. Now all of a sudden people came together and saw what they could do if they moved forward together. So.
And I'll just throw in, thanks, Nick. That was a great, succinct outline. We had a theme, and it was, what can you do with PBL? Or what is PBL? And in fact, in 2017, it was a pretty big mystery what PBL was. So 2017, the theme, the focus is, what is PBL? And so to have people like David Ross, who had formerly headed the Buck Institute for Education, and then at that time had just finished his headship at the Partnership for 21st Century Learning, we were bringing the best people in the world to speak to it. And that was important because our audience included other educators from around Colombia and parents. And those educators, by the way, were not just private school educators, but public school educators. And in Colombia, public school education, like in most other countries, is very, very traditional. And so the question of what is PBL is an even bigger question for those educators. So fast forward 2 years, 2019, we did our second Revolution in Education Congress. And what was that about?
Well, that was Schools of Innovation, Frank. So we started saying, we know what PBL is now. How do we make innovative schools? How do we make schools that challenge the tradition, that challenge the way we've been thinking about education for the past 100 years, and we start creating them innovative? And in that Congress, we had Gary Stager. He was one of the first teachers, or the first teachers who worked in a one-to-one school back in the 90s, one-to-one computers for every student. And he has a really nice book called Thinking, Tinkering, and Engineering. I think I have it. Inventing to Learn, Making, Tinkering, and Engineering in the Classroom. I have it right here. And we have Leon Trachtenberg. I don't know if you remember him, but he's the founder of Aleph School in Peru. It was a very, very nice presentation on schools that are doing innovation and who are doing it differently. And our last presenter was
Sylvia
Taldisano. Yes.
Yeah, who sadly passed away last year.
She passed away last year, and she was talking about digital learning and how we can use social media to actually create. That was like, students who really knew how to use social media in a meaningful way and actually to learn from them. That was very interesting as well. And we also had a lot of collaborators who are coming in this year as well. Jill Akers was there last year. We've had, Spencer was the first one, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, first one.
With our stand-up lunch presenter who shared the passion of what was happening at Dalton Academy in Beijing. So,
And I'll just add, because it's close to my heart, in 2019, we also had a sidebar presentation in Cartagena where we were starting a new school. And that speaker was Judy Helm, who's an early childhood educator and researcher. And she was talking about how now that we've got brain research and the ability to track how people learn with technology, she was talking about the important correlation between children doing project-based learning as infants, as kindergartners, and how that was fundamental to the development of their cognitive knowledge, of their brain growth. Once again, a worldwide significant figure in project-based learning. So with all that, what's happening now?
All right, Frank, we couldn't do it last year. We were supposed to do it in 2021, and COVID. We couldn't do it because of COVID. We really thought about doing some virtual things, but we did have our 24 hours of PBL class, which Nick, Frank, and I do every year, which we're going to do this year as well. But we decided to leave the Congress, or the physical Congress, the big Congress, for this year. And this year we have a very special theme, which is Schools of Purpose. So last year it was Schools of Innovation, or 3 years ago, last time we did it. And I think innovation is important, but now as we go in a post-COVID era, hopefully, let's see whatever we have next, but at least the post-COVID era, we are starting to think, what is the purpose of schools? And well, I know you guys also want to comment, because we did have a long discussion on the theme of this year.
Yeah, well, and I see that as something that's emerging in schools all around the world. Is why are young people showing up at school any given day? So what do they view as the purpose of school, and what's their own powerful purpose, their why? And then how much are schools as organizations tuning into that and shaping their own purpose, their own why around the impact they're having either in their community or globally, depending on their aspirations, and having that be the passion with which people bring to school every day. I was really fortunate to work on a school shortly after working with Frank, where this is in northern Idaho, where young people ride the same bus, whether at the public school or the charter school, and the young people at the traditional high school show up at that school at the end of the day, and they can't wait to get in there and hang out with the kids who are doing real purposeful things. And that was more than a decade ago, but it speaks to what happens in a school community when you really tap into that core purpose. And I think that really drove both Gabrielle and Frank to also think of other people who were operating in that realm.
And that underscores the real measure of what a school, of what a good school is.
Mm-hmm.
And that is simply this: do students run into the building faster in the morning than they want to leave it in the afternoon?
Right.
And that by that measure, most traditional schools fail. But by that measure, many schools that are deeply immersed, deeply invested in project-based learning, kids don't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I was doing rounds with Kaobos, one of the fifth grade teachers said to me, I'm having a little problem with some of my parents. They're complaining that I'm giving too much homework. Their kids come home from school, but they go right to their rooms and they sit down and they work on their lessons, and then they come late to dinner, and after dinner they want to leave and they don't sit around with the family like they used to do. So could you please stop assigning so much homework? And the teacher said, I had to tell those parents that I'm not assigning any homework.
Right.
Their children just can't leave their school behind.
Yeah.
Now that may upset family life, but for me, it tells me that those children want to learn. They are developing lifelong skills, the critical thinking skills that come with project-based learning, and they are learning lessons that will last them all of their life. Mm-hmm. So that was a good story.
Yeah, and it's, I often share variations on that, Frank, of saying, when you win their hearts like that, you just gain nights and weekends for free. That all of a sudden your idea of, oh, we have too little time to do this deep learning in a school setting, it's like, no, if you touch a young person in that way, they'll devote countless amount of time to it, and all of a sudden the school day is really not relevant at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'll do exactly what you just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gratifying. It's gratifying. So this year, as we roll out the new program, Gabrielle, can you give us a quick overview of what's going on and where we're doing it? Because we now have 2 campuses, not 1.
Oh yes, Frank, that's correct. Since we started this, we actually have a new school from our network of schools, or our community of schools for the Golden Circles. Frank is the designer of the school. I'm one of the founders as well, and it's called Avante Global School. It's part of the Golden Circles, and you know, I always see the Golden Circles as one thing, and it's our purpose is so that everybody on campus can find their purpose in life. And I think that's also why we started, well, we also came to an agreement of Schools of Purpose. And I'm going to show what we have in store this year, because it's going to be a very interesting year. Let me see. Are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to put on the slideshow. Well, this is the Revolution in Education Congress. We want to start the educational revolution and find the most innovative conferences around the world. For this year, we're going to have a lot of very interesting speakers who are going to be joining us from all over the world. We have Amaral Cunha, who is the principal of Escola Eleva. It is a school, a network of schools in Brazil who do a lot of project-based learning. Amari Salazar She is our principal for Avante Global School. She comes from a background of being, she has opened 2 schools in the US. She's been working as an EL school designer. And right now she helped us start Avante Global School in one of the worst pandemics in the world we've seen for the past 100 years. So it's going to be interesting to see how we managed to do all that and create community where we had to meet virtually. Our students, I think, are one of the few in the schools one of the few in the world who started in a school and could not go to it. Frank, obviously, you're going to be talking to us, and you're going to also be sharing your ideas of how to create schools in this new world and how to create them with purpose. Jill Akers, she is from our Global Advisory Board. She has been working in a lot of schools around the world. Right now, one of her biggest projects is in the American School of Singapore. And she's going to be talking to us on how to create, project-based learning, especially in the young ages. Nick, well, you know Nick. He's one of the founders of the Revolution Education Congress. He has been we've been working together, as you've seen. And Nick is going to be joining us as well with some workshops. Nick, you want to tell us what you're going to be doing?
Sure, that's a good prompt for me to decide what I'm going to do. But one of them is to come up with some thoughtful strategies for kind of hacking the environment that you're in and making it more conducive for project-based learning. And some of that will involve some furniture whispering, and some of that will involve thinking differently about the way we use time in the learning environments that we're in.
Many people don't know what furniture whispering is.
That's right, because I'm the world's only furniture whisperer, and that's because I decided that was an interesting name. But if you have ever heard of the idea of a horse whisperer, someone who can kind of coax the best possible performance out of the most unruly horse, I do the same with furniture. And Frank and Gabrielle and I have seen some pretty awful furniture all around the world. And there are some pretty simple things that you can do to make that less of a barrier to doing the good work that we know is possible.
Aren't you the guy, Nick, that created stand-up desks for one of your school clients? Yes. With traditional school desks and about $2 worth of plastic drain pipe?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I learned of a young boy who felt like a stand-up desk would change his way of learning. And so I tracked down who that was, showed up with my several dollars of plastic pipe and a few other things, and within a few minutes, we transformed that traditional desk into a stand-up desk, and no public furnishings were damaged beyond recognition. And hopefully, in the meantime, they actually made an investment in much better furniture than we could make for a few dollars.
Okay, I interrupted. I'm sorry.
Gabrielle was in the flow there, but I'll pick up the Susie piece. Susie Boss is a longtime a friend of Frank and I, as well as also on the Global Advisory Board. And she's the author of at least a dozen books on project-based learning, has written some really thoughtful books about putting all of this into practice in many different settings, and also wrote The Power of a Plant with Stephen Ritz. So she's deep involved in everything that's happening in the world today around project-based learning.
Yeah, Carlos Alberto Casas, he is the principal of Caobos recently since this year, and he's going to be talking to us about what Caobos has done on project-based learning and what's the purpose of what we're doing and how we can look to the next. Caobos is now turning 30 years old, so we're trying to think what the next 30 years are going to look like. Probably unsuccessfully, but at least the next 3 we'll know for sure.
Well, Gabrielle, that's an interesting thing to remember, 30 years from now. An interesting thing is this month and last month, the class of 2040 is being born around the world, completing their secondary education in the year 2040. 30 years from now, they'll be potentially the parents of young people showing up at school. Who knows? That is a bit of a segue to Susanna Johnson. She works for an organization called What School Could Be. That came from the work of Ted Dintersmith. He wrote a book traveling around the United States and identifying some of the most innovative practices at High Tech High, at One Stone, and many other programs around the country. And they have since created a group, an online presence of somewhere in the order of 3,000 to 5,000 people who are thinking differently about the future of education. And then Stephen Heppel is in London, and he was the founder of Not School many years ago. He's moved on to other things in the world, but he's been an innovator in the future of education for, I don't know what you say, Frank, 20 years, more than 20 years probably.
Oh, more than that, yeah.
Yeah. And we're really fortunate to have him being a part of this experience, because he always is, as they often say, looking over the horizon and sharing what else we should be thinking about for Gabrielle as you're beginning to envision what life at Los Cabos would be in 30 years. Stephen's the kind of person who thinks that way.
Yeah, I generally call Stephen Heppel an educational provocateur.
Provocateur is great, yeah.
Because that's what he does. He's also a professor at University of Portsmouth, but he doesn't let that get in his way.
That's good. Yeah, we never let a educational credential get in the way of doing great things.
Yeah.
And then Jill Hichwa, who we don't have visually represented here, is an American who's lived in Portugal for most of her adult life, and she has a sweet little school called Jill's Place International, and Frank has been a part of visioning and professional learning and many other things with that school for at least 5 years, maybe more. Also attended the learning environments for Tomorrow Institute at Harvard.
Right, and we're now growing a new building for them. But Jill's got a, my first word was unique, but I want to say more than unique, she's got a fundamentally correct approach to early childhood education. Her school is very much based on the principles of Reggio Emilia, and that says a lot right there. But beyond that, her most critical staff member is a developmental psychologist, and she's going to be talking about student assessments and how they allow the teachers to understand the students better. And they now are working with parent assessments and teacher assessments. The latter two you might not think would be a regular staple of a good school, but they are, because in a sense, everybody is growing. And parents especially need to understand research appropriate best practices and why the schools their children are going to don't look like traditional schools. So Jill, I think, will be very informative and provocative for the traditional thinking about what school is. So does that round out our presenters?
That rounds up our international presenters, yes. We're obviously going to have a lot of presenters from CAUWOS as well, and from Avanti. CAUWOS in Bogota and Avanti at Cartagena. And we're going to be showing...
What about Ben Nelson?
Oh, Ben Nelson, yes, that is correct. He is, well, we were still confirming his dates, but...
We're working it out.
Yes, you are correct, Frank. We were still confirming the dates he was going to be there, but I think we had them confirmed. So Ben Nelson is going to be here. You want to talk a little bit about Ben?
Well, Ben's really interesting because he, like many of our other presenters, marches to a different drummer, all within the spirit of better learning. Ben's the founder of Minerva University, and a Minerva Baccalaureate, which is the high school variation on it, but also a new component called Minerva Program. And the key to all three of those is that his research has peeled away the content layers of education. We are so burdened by cognitive content that ministries force us to foist upon our children. We lose an understanding of how learning really works. And Ben's been able to go beyond content and go into how understanding is formed. He has a very clear picture of how primary school children are different than secondary school children because of where they are developmentally. It's basically, pre-puberty and post. And he's going to outline how this looks in his university, in his high school work, and now with Minerva Project, where they are advising educational institutions around the world how it looks when other well-established institutions are paying attention. So we are working Ben into our schedule. I'm sure we'll get a good placement for him, and I'm looking forward to his presentation as well as all of these other ones.
Yeah, and Ben was actually one of our, 2 weeks ago, we had him in our first webinar, and 1 week ago, we had John Larmer on our second webinar.
Yeah, Gabriel, so can you tell us a little more about these webinars?
All right, but first, Frank, I'm going to tell you who should attend to this.
Okay.
And remember, we used to have the description of every single person we wanted to attend. Well, now we have a different idea of who we want here at the Revolution Education Congress. And this is what we came up with. It's innovators, disruptors, and activators of learning. This basically does a summary of who we want to come to this Revolution Education Congress.
That's great. And another piece of this, Gabrielle, is that amongst the presentations and workshops and things, there will be educators from within Los Cabos and other places coming to share the wonderful things that they're doing, as well as some of the young people that they work with, talking about what's driving them to show up at school every day and the kinds of work that they're involved in.
Yes. And now, Frank, as you were saying, so this year we have some webinars that we wanted to give, for free, that we're transmitting on YouTube. And we had our first one, who was Ben Nelson. We had our second one, who is John Larmer. Frank, you called him the father of PBL, right?
Yeah, pretty much, because of his fundamentally important position in the Buck Institute for Education, now PBL World, or PBL Works, sorry. Yeah, sounds good.
And today we're having, Nick, Frank, and Gabrielle, which is the founders of the Revolution Education Congress. We're going to have the 7th of March. We're going to have Susie Boss. We already talked about her, and she is part of the actual physical Congress. The 22nd of March at 2 p.m., we're going to have Susanna Johnson, Director of Global Curriculum and Coaching on what schools could be. She's also going to be one of the presenters here. The 24th of March, it's Catherine Fraze. Frank, you remember her from
Yeah.
100 Roads. Can you tell us a little bit more about her?
Well, Catherine's fascinating because of her background and her attitude. But she came to our attention when she founded I can't call it a school because it didn't offer degrees, but it was a place of learning for children, students who were homeschooled. And it was the place for them to go for short periods of time and apply their learning. And in that site, they had everything from maker spaces to art rooms to stages for learning, learning the thespian skills. And With that as a start, Catherine has now gone and founded 100 Roads, which is a web-based tool and programs for fairly much carrying out the same concepts, only on a much, much bigger scale. So she's exciting because she walks the line between education and technology.
All right. Thank you, Frank. We have Jill Hichua, which is the founder of Jill's Place, and we have Spencer Fowler. Frank, I think you have to talk about him a little bit more.
Well, Spencer is the head of the Dalton School in Beijing, and also the superintendent of this is a very, I see the text has a very long title there, but basically Dalton Academy is a boutique school within of about 350 students within the 2,400 student affiliated high school of Peking University. And Spencer started as the head, but in the last 5 years has taken on the role of the superintendent of the Dalton Academies, and they are sprouting up in various locations around China. I tell everyone that Dalton Academy is the best high school in the world, and it simply is because it does so many things. At Dalton, they are doing so many things that are the quintessential 21st century practices, such as having students create their own courses, having students teach teachers, having students craft their own personal learning plans, and it goes on and on. And every time I turn around, Dalton is doing something else that's pushing the envelope, and I regard them as really a test case of what 21st century learning can be at the high school level.
All right. And then the 22nd of April, we're going to have our third annual 24 Hours of Project-Based Learning Plus.
Gabrielle, I thought I'd say a few things about that, which is that we began with a fully live event, just streaming from 8 a.m. in London all the way around till the following morning, all around the world. And we have repeated that experience last year. And I think collectively, we've now had well over 1,000 participants, viewers, etc. But more importantly, virtually every continent around the world represented, and I think somewhere on the order of 25 countries or so. And this year, in addition to all of these videos that are being a part of the pre-Congress being visible, we'll have recorded messages and presentations from people all around the world, including young people. There's a group of young people in North Carolina in a middle school that I went to visit, who are going to talk about a civil rights project that they were involved in. We have people in years 5 and 6 in Australia who will talk about the kinds of transformational projects that they've been engaged in, and many other voices, young and old, on that very long day. Looking forward to more people participating in it when it comes along.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting this year, I think, and a little bit easier for us, right? We not have to be live all of the 24 hours.
What Gabrielle means is that Nick stayed up for 24 hours in a row the first year we did this 3 years ago. That's what it means.
And I stayed up last year, so.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We thought it was smart and decided that people would bring their best selves if they could show up at an hour that worked best for them, and we'll keep reinventing it each year.
Okay. So Gabrielle, what's the bottom line here? I see 3 dates: 26, 27, 28 April.
So the 26th is going to be more for parents. We're going to have the Global Advisory Board, and we're going to talk about, training global entrepreneurs. It's the second conversational that we're going to have with the Golden Circles Maximum Advisory Board. And it's going to be in Cartagena. We're going to have it in the convention center, the Gran Salón Getsemani. And it's going to be a big event. It's going to be at night at around 6:30 p.m. We hope that everybody in Cartagena can come. Last year, or 2 years ago, I think, Frank, we had around 1,200 people at this convention center. And we hope that this year it's going to be the same turnout, because it's everybody learning about education, parents, teachers, people from other cities. And I think it's a great and important way to spread how we do things differently. As an educator, I always say, if you're in education, what you have to do is you have to always be kind with what you know and share it with everybody else around the world. The 27th of April, it's going to be it's going to be directed to people who we just said who we wanted to come, and it's going to be at Avante Global School. We're going to have some workshops, we're going to have some keynotes, we're going to have an all-day learning experience. Kids are not going to come to school that day, they're going to go virtual. And we're going to have us as Avante teaching everyone else what we can do. And all of the people we mentioned before, most of them are going to be in Cartagena too, doing some keynotes and doing some workshops. And that's going to be at the school. And the 28th of April, we have our 3-day Revolution Education Congress, Schools of Purpose in Bogota, Chia, the one we've been doing for the past 5 years. And this one, it's going to be the same. We're going to have students presenting work. We're going to have a project that we're going to give you in the beginning and that you hopefully can do on each day. And it's going to be how to create your own schools of purpose. And then we're going to have workshops, keynotes. We're going to have a conversatory as well with the Maximum Advisory Board. I think it's going to be one of our biggest, Frank and Nick, and as it should be, because here in Colombia, we've been seeing that we do need to innovate, and project-based learning, innovation, and purpose of schools has to come within the first line of what do we do as this new era of teaching of education comes to place.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Great.
And that's 28th, 29th, and 30th. So that's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yes.
And we're really looking forward to people being in that setting and also joining us in Cartagena.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
So what will those days in Bogota look like more specifically?
So, Frank, the first day, we're going to have an introduction. We're going to have a keynote, and what we're going to do is we're going to start the day off with a keynote. It's cold here in Bogota, so we're going to shake things up and start with inspiring keynotes from the presenters we previously said. It's going to be. It's going to be Steven. It's going to be Susana. Stephen Heppel, Susana Johnson. We're going to have Jill Hichua, and we're going to have a conversatory with the Maximum Advisory Board for the Golden Circles. So we're going to have Jill, Susie, Frank, Nick is going to join us there, and Amaral. And we have two that aren't coming, which is Spencer and Barry DeQuan, Spencer Fowler and Barry DeQuan. But they are going to, but we will have them someday. And then the first day we're going to leave that first keynote, and we're going to have some project presentations. So you're going to be able to see what the students here at Caobos are doing. We have a celebration of learning every 3 months. That's what we call our project presentation day. And it's when students present what they've been working on. And we call it celebrations of learning because we can see the enthusiasm that students put into their work. When they're not learning just to get a grade, when they're not learning just to have an exam, they're interested in showing everybody around them what they did. And they're proud to show parents and educators around the world that they've actually learned and they created something meaningful for them and meaningful for society. So we're going to have that presentation. And then in the afternoon, we're going to go to what we call workshop sessions. And the first workshop sessions, there's going to be 1.5 hour workshop sessions. And the idea is that our Maximum Advisory Board, our international presenters, as well as Caobos presenters, are gonna have their own sessions, and you're gonna be able to join the one you like the most, at least until we have our full capacity done. And you're gonna learn in a project-based learning style. We don't want those to be just presentations of somebody showing what they learned, but it's actually gonna be project-based learning. It's gonna be workshop type learning, and that's why we have it for 1.5 hours. After that, in Avante, it's gonna be a little bit less because it's closer together. And after that, we're gonna start off the day with, or we're gonna end the day with the project and some icebreakers as well. And then the second day is basically the same, but instead of student presentations, we're gonna have another workshop session. And that continues to be until the third day. It's gonna be very inspiring. We're gonna have lunches with also probably some surprises where we have other presenters, and well, we're going to have a day of learning. You're going to be able to meet 300 of the most innovative educators around Colombia. You're going to meet people from all over the world. We've had people from Chile, from Peru, from other places come in, and we hope this year, given the restrictions, we are skeptical, but we hope that other people around the world come as well.
Are we going to give a long distance traveled award?
We are, of course. So everybody watching, if you are in the farthest place away from Colombia, you are going to get an award if you come to the Revolutionary Education Congress. So if I can't make it better than that, Frank, I don't know how.
Well, that means that maybe Stephen Heppel and I will be arm wrestling over that, given that I'm several hours outside of London. So I get the extra boost from him.
Nick, organizers are disqualified from getting the award.
Oh no, that's not fair.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. So what's happening at the very end, the wrap up on Saturday?
Yeah, so no, we're gonna do it this year, Frank. We're gonna have it on the first day. So we're gonna have a cocktail with some presentations, and we're gonna see. We always have a surprise, but this year we decided to do it the first day, so we can have we're gonna have a cocktail the first day, and it's gonna be for networking as well. So you start the Congress off knowing all of your fellow teachers who are gonna be with you the next 2 days. I think it's a nice, interesting way that we don't keep this just as self-learning, but we do it as a group.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Okay. And what about the student ambassadors? How do they fit into this picture?
All right, Frank, you're asking all the questions. It's like if you knew this Congress already. So we have a group called Elogica here at Caobos. It's actually a company. We're going to call it a company. We do focus on entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, but also entrepreneurship that gives the world something meaningful. That's what we want our students to be focused on. It's an ethical entrepreneurship. And what we do here is we have a group of students who are called Elogica, and they do all of the logistics here at any event at the school. So if you want to do a Congress like I do, we have to meet with them. They have their president and their directives, and you have to meet with them, tell them the specifics, and create a contract with them that they know that this is what the event is, this is how many days, and this is what we expect from them. And they organize everything. They organize the people who are coming in. They take care of our international guests. They make sure that nothing goes wrong, and they're in every single classroom, just there to see if IT works, because there's nothing that IT likes more than not working when you need it to. I know this is Gary Stager. It says, I think he had a problem with his computer that you couldn't hear the sound, and he said IT means not working when you have 300 people to present to.
Right.
I think that's around.
Your ambassadors, Gabriela, have always been the stars of every Congress that we've done, in that not only are they doing all that background work and making everything flow for all the various speakers and presenters and workshop leaders and everything, but their personalities and aspirations shine through as well. And inevitably, their support led to a deeper connection with whoever they were paired up with. And we really get to hear their stories about where they want to go in the world and what's next for them. And it that all by itself is an inspiration to come to the Congress, is to just see a group of young people who really care about where the world is going.
And I remember in 2019 that the student ambassador that was in my workshop was able to do simultaneous translations as good as the translator that we had hired. And she ultimately went and did some gigs with that company. So she was brought on board as a professional to go out and do what she did so seamlessly, which I think is testimony to the education she got at Calbos, both in terms of her knowledge of 2 languages, but also in terms of her repose, her confidence, her ability to handle that. That was a wonderful experience for me to observe. So that was good. Yeah, we only have a few minutes left, and I'm wondering, Gabrielle, whether you could highlight how people get to get to our pre-Congress webinars, how they get to sign up. What do they do if they want to sign up? Do we have one-stop shopping for that? How's that work?
Yeah, so in the link below or in the description of this video, you're gonna see our website. It's www.recommunity.org, and in that you're gonna find all the events, which are in how they're in the same timeline that as they're happening. And if you click on any event, or if you click on subscribe, you give us your data or your emails, your name, and we will be sending you links for the future webinars. And in that same website, you're going to find a link to subscribe to the events. If you want to come to the actual events, that's where you're going to find them. And I hope, any other questions, the contacts are there in that same website. You can find all the information.
Okay, anything else need to be said?
No, I think we're good. We do have some people viewing right now, and I don't know if they have any questions. It's going to take a few minutes for the live streaming to actually catch up. But
okay,
yeah, we can talk about them.
Why don't you answer some of their questions before they ask them?
Yeah, a few things I realized I wanted to cycle back to. I mentioned Susanna Johnson, one of the keynotes, with what school could be. And I just in passing mentioned Ted Dintersmith. He was the producer of Most Likely to Succeed, which is a documentary about life in one of the most innovative American schools, High Tech High in San Diego. And that film was what he carried around the United States and shared in various communities, and then learned about other innovative things happening. And one of our intents is to have that film available throughout the Congress so that people can step away from all the things that we're doing and immerse themselves in that entire experience. So that all by itself will be a great reason to come.
Yeah, that's a really good documentary. My 2 big takeaways are it was more than just looking at a school. It had a running theme of a couple of parents who were worried about whether their kids were going to get a good education. And so he keeps bringing us back to them over and over in the course of the 90 minutes of basically it's a feature-length motion picture. And then there was a student who was trying to get his project off the ground, and he had the most amount of challenges, but he also had the most amount of determination, and it all came together. All good, and we expect that showing Most Likely to Succeed is going to provoke lots more conversation, as it always does. Yep. And that's a good thing. And hopefully we'll have parents and educators there, and they can all talk with each other.
Yep.
You know?
All right. All right, Frank, Nick, so we don't have any questions. I think we've given them all of the information that was needed.
We've answered it all. Yes, we answered it all.
Thank you so much, Nick and Frank. And for everybody viewing, don't hesitate to go to the website to ask us any questions, to go into the chat and or into the comments for this video and give us a few comments on anything you need. We're going to be live on last week of April, and we hope you can join us.
And what was that website again, Gabriel?
It's www.recommunity.org. O-R-G.
Let that be the last word then.
All right. See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Guys.
Right.